All right. We are here today. Welcome to today's Forks Over Knives webinar. We are with none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Dr. Will Bulsiewicz. Dr. Will, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Glad that you're here today. Super excited to get started and jump into this.
For sure. So today we're going to be talking about one of Will's superpowers. He's going to be giving you a good description of exactly what the gut microbiome is and why it's important not only for general health but particularly for achieving your ideal body weight. So the name of the title is, or the title of the webinar is "Healthy Gut, Healthy Weight: The Plant Foods Connection." And there's a lot of really good information. I already saw the presentation. I got a sneak peek, and every time Dr. Will talks, I'm trying to scribble down as much information as I possibly can because he is a fountain of knowledge. And joining us today, we also have the newest whole food plant-based eater. She's actually 4 months old. Her name is Indigo Hope Kambata, so that's why I'm standing here rocking back and forth awkwardly. But just bear with us today because as we want to keep her asleep while we're going through this. And Dr. Will, how's life today?
These are great, man. I have been, I've had a pretty crazy 24 hours, to be totally honest with you. So it's just kind of classic. When it rains, it pours. Yesterday, my car broke down. So I was car free. My wife's like dropping me off at work. And my son woke up with some bad dreams last night. So I didn't get very much rest, only to come into a Wednesday where this morning I gave a presentation to the Medical University of South Carolina GI faculty about personalized nutrition. And this afternoon around lunchtime, I was on with Chuck Carroll from PCRM. We did a live podcast, and now here we are. And I'm super excited. This is the nightcap to talk about weight loss. And so
So there it is, with the life of a rock star, just going from one presentation to the next. I love it.
yeah, it's
Uh,
been wild, but I'm super excited about what we're going to do here today.
yeah, it was great. Okay, so for those of you guys who are joining us, we got a whole bunch of you guys in the chat box right now, or in the presentation. So do me a favor, go to the chat box and write the number one if you are currently plant based. Write the number two if you are not, if you would identify as not being plant based, and then write like a 1.5 if you're someone sort of in between the transition from plant based to not plant based, or vice versa. That way we can get kind of a good feel for who's in the room. And let me see here. Stuff moves quickly. We see lots of ones, some 1.5s. I'd say on average we got, I don't know, the average is probably like a 1.2. How's that sound? Okay, so we got a pretty plant strong audience. So I'm sure you're probably preaching to the choir here. But again, the whole point of this conversation is to understand the connection between your gut and your body weight, because there's a very, very strong connection between the two of those. And for many people who are trying to achieve their ideal body weight, they don't recognize that actually the health of your microbiome has a very huge controlling is a huge controlling factor in determining whether or not you can achieve your ideal body weight today and maintain that into the future. So for those of you who don't know who Dr. Will Bulsiewicz is, he's also known as Dr. B. That's what you call him if you're cool. He's a gastroenterologist. He's an internationally recognized gut health expert, and he's a New York Times bestselling author of the book Fiber Fueled. Will, do you have that book in your hand, perchance?
There.
Right there. He's pointing to it right there. If you haven't picked up a copy of Fiber Fueled, please go do it. It's literally one of the best books on gut health that I've ever read, and if you take a look at the reviews online, it's insane. This guy has, at this point, 5,000 plus reviews, if I'm not mistaken. High 4,000 plus reviews, and it's got like 4.7 rating on Amazon. It's a brilliant book. Now, in addition to that book that he released in 2020, he's also releasing a new book this year. It's called the Fiber Fueled Cookbook. Nobody knows about that except you guys. He completed a bachelor's degree from Vanderbilt University and a medical degree from Georgetown University and a master's in clinical investigation from Northwestern University. In other words, this guy's very smart. He was also the chief medical resident at Northwestern and the chief gastroenterology fellow at the University of North Carolina, and received not just a kinda good award, but literally the highest award given by both his residency and his fellowship. He's been featured by lots of media outlets and popular podcasts, and he's the author of more than 20 peer-reviewed scientific articles in the top gastroenterology journals. So, you're in the presence of greatness. That's the least I can say about this guy. I also consider Will to be a very good friend of mine, and we are both on the same mission to try and improve the health of millions of people around the planet. He does it through gut health education. We do it mainly through blood glucose and diabetes education. So let's go to the chat box here one more time, and let's take a look. I see I see a lot more 1.5s coming in. So Will, I believe you probably have like a 1.4, 1.5 average of all the people that are here right now.
Cool.
Last thing I'll say here is, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Cyrus Kambata. I have a PhD in nutritional biochemistry. I've also been living with type 1 diabetes for 19 years at this point. And I run a business called Mastering Diabetes, where we help people transition to a plant-based diet for optimal insulin sensitivity to reverse insulin resistance. Will and us had the opportunity to both publish books the same year within months of each other at the beginning of 2020. Our book, Mastering Diabetes, turned into a New York Times bestseller. His book, Fiber Fuel, turned into a New York Times bestseller. And as a result of that, we are both on the same mission here and hopefully successfully changing the lives of lots of people around the planet. So, with that being said, Dr. Will, you ready to blow people's minds?
For sure. Let's do it.
Awesome. I will let you take over. You want to share your screen? I'll turn off video and we can get into the meat of the presentation.
Sounds good. All right. Good. Y'all can see that? Good. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. I'm Dr. Will Bulsiewicz. I'm a gastroenterologist in Charleston, South Carolina, the New York Times bestselling author of Fiber Fueled, as Cyrus said, and I'm excited to talk to you about healthy gut, healthy weight.
Will,
so, yeah.
Can I cut you off for 1 second? I apologize. I was actually going to teach the audience here about a new product that Forks Over Knives just came out with. And do you mind if I just take over screen share for a second?
Yeah,
and then I'll let you go into the presentation?
For sure.
Apologies for that awkwardness. That's my fault. Okay, so here we go. Give me 1 second. Here we go. Can you guys see my screen? You can see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, cool. All right, so as you guys probably know, the team at Forks Over Knives is all about trying to teach people around the world how they can live the healthiest life possible. And just when you didn't think the Forks Over Knives team could do it any better than they already are doing it, they have a brand new product that is just out as of December of this last year to make whole food plant-based eating easier, more enjoyable, and more accessible to everyone around the world. They have released a new line of chef-inspired frozen meals, as you can see on the screen here. They're trying to make eating healthier even easier and even more delicious. So let me tell you a little bit more about these best tasting, most nutritious, and ridiculously tasty vegan frozen meals available. Okay, so these bowls that you see on the screen right here have an incredible nutritional profile. They use only whole food plant-based ingredients that are 100% pure and simple. That means that they use whole grains, legumes, and vegetables and are as close as possible to the way that nature intended them to be with minimal processing. They're packed with vegetables to keep you healthy and to keep you super energized. They do not contain any added oils. They contain no artificial ingredients, no preservatives, and no refined sugars, and that is very important. They're also very low in salt. They have good amounts of protein and good amounts of fiber, and they're made in the United States using recipes created exclusively for Forks Over Knives that you will not find anywhere else. Now, there are a few bowls that I want to draw your attention to. The first one is the Sesame Ginger Bowl. They know that whole food plant-based meals don't have to be bland and they don't have to be boring. This is the Sesame Ginger Fancy Veggies and Rice Bowl. It has brown rice and lots of vegetables like shiitake mushrooms, asparagus tips, and edamame in a ginger sesame sauce. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting pretty hungry. Next up is the fire roasted enchilada stack bowl with corn tortillas, brown rice, black beans, and fire roasted corn and zucchini in a slightly spicy rojo sauce made with traditional New Mexico chilies. And then finally, the Tuscan Garden penne bowl that has a whole wheat penne pasta with Roma tomatoes, kale, and cauliflower in a light Tuscan style tomato sauce. Trust me, guys, these are not your average dinners. They are way better, way tastier, and way healthier for you. Hopefully, your mouth is watering as much as mine is. The thing is that you can buy these bowls in the frozen section at your local Sprouts Farmers Market grocery store. That's the only store that they're available in right now. And the Forks Over Knives team is working real hard to make sure that they can get it into as many grocery stores as possible in case there is no Sprouts around you. Now, the most important thing here is that these bowls are currently on sale. Normally they sell for $6.99 a piece. They are currently on sale for $4.99 a piece. So if you live in an area where there's a Sprouts Farmers Market, please go, please pick these up, please buy them, and please rate them and give Forks Over Knives your feedback. They work unbelievably hard to make these meals tasty and delicious using whole food ingredients. And we want to know exactly what you think, exactly how you feel, and exactly how much you enjoy them. So please go pick these up. And if you want more information, go to forksoverknives.com/frozen, and we will go from there. With that being said, Will, you are welcome to take the screen share over one more time.
Perfect. Let's do it. All right. Hello, everyone. So today we are talking healthy gut, healthy weight. And I think it's important before we jump into this to create a proper mindset or context for our conversation about creating a healthy weight or weight balance. And that is to say that I feel like when we get around the new year, it's like the diet culture and all the people trying to sell you stuff are just stage 5. Like they are off the charts. And unfortunately, the solution that you are being sold on repeat, broken record, is deprivation, restriction, and fear of your food. And this is not a solution to having a healthy gut. This is not a solution to having a healthy metabolism. And this is never going to work in the long term. It's a broken promise before we ever start. So I think it's important to understand that it's possible for the solution to be abundance. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Don't let someone else's expectations of what you're supposed to be frame who you are. You should be yourself. But that being said, when you look in the mirror, you should love the person that you see. I want that for everyone. I want that for you. I believe that you deserve that. I think we all deserve that. I didn't love the person that I saw in the mirror when I looked at myself in 2012. This is me. I'm 32 years old. I'm in my GI training, and I am a highly accomplished medical doctor, and yet I am miserable. You can see the litany of issues that I have here. I've gained 50 pounds. I'm having digestive issues, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, fatigue, anxiety, extremely low self-esteem. Did not matter what was happening in my professional life. Did not matter how great people might perceive that my life was from the outside. On the inside, I was broken. And I needed a change. And the blessing that I had in my life was that I met my wife, and she motivated and inspired me to change my diet. I went from a fast food, junk food diet, truly addicted multiple times a day, to starting to introduce more plants. This was not a cannonball into the plant-based community. This was me starting to introduce some plants, starting to do some smoothies, and felt differences very quickly. Energy levels rising, feeling so much better, weight is melting off. And I came across this study, which came out, it was published in the journal in 2014, first published online in 2013. Lawrence David, Nature, diet rapidly and reproducibly alters the human gut microbiome. And what you find in this study is that, so it is accepted common knowledge in 2022 that our gut microbiome is in large part shaped by our dietary choices. This was not common knowledge in 2014. We didn't have clarity on whether it was possible as a human being to change our microbiome by simply changing our food. And in this study, they put people on 5 days of a completely plant-based diet versus 5 days of a completely animal-based diet, meat, dairy, eggs. The difference in just 5 days was striking to the point that it opened my eyes to the power of a plant-based diet. When people were eating plant-based, they were empowering their gut microbes with fiber, and that fiber was being transformed into short-chain fatty acids, which are the most anti-inflammatory molecules I've ever come across. We're going to talk more about those. Flip side, 5 days animal-based diet, not pretty. Inflammatory microbes, carcinogenic secondary bile salts, antibiotic-resistant bacteria, but no short-chain fatty acids. Not a formula for success. This opened my eyes, and I became even more motivated to eat plants. And I started to treat my patients with a plant-based diet. And I'm on this journey, and I came across this study, the American Gut Project. It was presented at Digestive Disease Week by Dr. Rob Knight, who's one of the most famous microbiome researchers on the planet. And he's at the University of California, San Diego. And there it was, 2017. He's up at the podium. I'm in the front row. And he says to the audience, the single greatest predictor of a healthy gut is the diversity of plants in your diet. And that hit me. And that message hit me so hard that it ultimately turned into my book, Fiber Fueled. But it also, in my own life, motivated me even more. More plants, in abundance, in diversity, without restrictions, without limits. No calorie counting, just plant counting. And here's what happened. 50 pounds gone, anxiety gone, self-esteem surging. And here I am, and this is me in my 40s. And I feel younger than I did in my 30s, and I'm in the best shape of my life. And I'm grateful for the role that a plant-based diet played in this transformation that occurred with me. But there's science behind this. This is not just a shot in the dark. This is not just an anecdote. This is biology, and it involves our gut microbiome. That's what I want to talk to you about today. I believe that healing my gut was key to my personal transformation, and I hope that this message that I share with you today is going to touch many of you, and I hope that it is going to improve the lives of some of you. I really do. So let's talk about the gut microbiome. 38 trillion microbes. That is a lot of microbes. All right, that is a multiple of the number of stars in the sky, made up of this combination of mostly bacteria, but some fungi, some archaea, possibly parasites, viruses. We have more microbes than we have human cells, and they account for 99.5% of our genetic code. Each one of us has a diverse mix of different species of microbes, anywhere from 300 to 1,000. And this mix of microbes creates an ecosystem that we call the gut microbiome. And the gut microbiome, which isn't even human, turns out to perhaps be the most important thing for human health. It's critical to our digestion, which, by the way, like, what's more organic for human health than that? That's access to nutrients. Can't exist without that. But our gut microbes are in direct communication with 70% of our immune system that lives there in the gut, connected to our mood, our cognition, our brain health, connected to our metabolism, the way that the engine burns, our hormones and our hormonal balance, both men and women, and even the expression of our genetic code. So our gut microbiome is the quarterback in the center, and here's all the different parts that are being touched by these gut microbes. They are connected to the most important parts of the way that you work as a human for human health, for your personal health. Today, we're going to focus on the metabolism. All right. So now, if you read my book, Fiber Fueled, you probably didn't have to get too far to see this. This is a table from chapter 1 of Fiber Fueled. And I'm talking about the different connections that exist between our gut microbiome and our metabolism. Each of the conditions that you see being listed on this screen are conditions in which we have discovered that when this is present, obesity, diabetes, coronary artery disease, hyperlipidemia, and whatnot, all the way down the line, when these conditions are present, you will find that there has been a change, a derangement of the gut microbiome. It has moved away from harmony and balance and moved to a state of being unbalanced, which we refer to as dysbiosis. Some people call it leaky gut on the internet. Be careful what you read on the internet. Probably don't need me to tell you that, but this is what we call dysbiosis. And today, we're going to focus on this connection that exists with obesity, with weight gain. So now dysbiosis, here's how it looks, okay? On the left, homeostasis, balance. And what we have is we have a nice mix of different types of bacteria, and we have short chain fatty acids that exist here. And these short chain fatty acids, these bacteria, are creating a friendly environment where the colon wall is healthy, it's being nourished. The short chain fatty acids, butyrate specifically, actually function as most of the energy source for our colon cells. Flip side, over here, dysbiosis, damaged, unbalanced, altered gut microbiome. And what you're finding is there's no more this balance of bacteria anymore. The bad guys are running the show. The posse has come into town. It's taken over. Everyone else is in hiding. And by the way, there are no short chain fatty acids to be seen. The short chain fatty acids that are supposed to be the source of energy for our colon cells, maintaining health in that part of our body, they're not there. Now, I want to look at some of the proof that the connection between our gut and our weight balance is legit. All right. If you give a pig antibiotics, particularly early in life, what you will find is that that pig will gain 16% more weight. If you give antibiotics to one of our kids, so, I have 2 and we have a 3rd on the way, Cyrus has a new baby. If you give antibiotics to a child, the child is more likely to become overweight or obese. Each dose of antibiotics increases the likelihood of being overweight later on by 7%. Each course of antibiotics increases the likelihood of obesity by 6%. And there are these interesting studies where they have demonstrated the ability to transfer a body habitus through the gut microbiome. So in these studies, what they do is they take a mouse, a special type of mouse that is born without a microbiome, completely sterile, and they will transfer the microbiome from a human into these mice. So imagine that into these 3 mice, you put a normal-sized human, an obese human, and an underweight human's microbiome. And then you feed these mice the exact same food, the exact same number of calories. What do you find? The answer, and this has been reproduced a number of times, is that you will transfer the body habitus. The mouse that receives the normal microbiome becomes a normal size. The mouse that receives an obese microbiome becomes obese. And the mouse that receives the underweight microbiome is underweight, yet they are consuming the exact same food, exact same number of calories. So let's play Where's Waldo with our gut microbes and our metabolism. I want to basically explore 3 different scenarios that I believe are related to the weight loss that I personally experienced on making changes to my dietary pattern. All right, so number 1, if we want to achieve weight balance, we want actually to give people satiety after a meal. Satiety means satisfaction, fullness. Like you get to a point where you're like, oh gosh, I feel good. I've had enough to eat. That's what we're trying to achieve. All right, and let's start with this study where people were fed a tofu burger and also a pork and cheeseburger. Okay. So people were fed these burgers. One is the tofu burger, the other is the pork and cheeseburger. The calories were exactly the same. The macros were exactly the same. But there was a difference in terms of the saturated fat content. Clearly, the plant did not have as much saturated fat as the meat and cheese. And there was a difference in terms of the fiber content. Plants have fiber. Meat and cheese don't have fiber. The 2.2 grams of fiber that you see is from the bun. All right, so clearly a difference in terms of these two. What happened? Same macros, same calories, but more fiber in the plants. By the way, there's Waldo right there. Here's what we see. So in these graphs, the meat and cheese is in blue. The plants are in orange. And we have three groups: people with diabetes, people who are obese, and people who are healthy. All right, these are the three groups that were being studied. We are looking in this case at satiety hormones. In other words, when the bar is higher, that means that we are activating the hormones that make you feel full. GLP-1 in the diabetes, obesity, and healthy control groups, you see higher GLP-1 release if you're eating the plant-based burger. Again, same calories, same macros, more of the hormone that makes us feel full. Right over here, the amylin. Again, same deal. More of the amylin with the plant-based burger in all of these groups. Peptide YY, once again, it's like a broken record. More of the satiety hormone, peptide YY, among all three groups when you are eating the tofu burger. Same calories, same macros, different results. The results were statistically significant in all three groups: diabetes group, obese group, healthy group. The plant-based burger, even though it had the same calories, the same macros, was more satisfying to the people in this study. Interesting. How about another study? This is one of my favorites. Plant-based versus a ketogenic diet. This is a study done by Kevin Hall, who is a researcher, a metabolism researcher at the National Institutes of Health. Published about a year ago in Nature Medicine. And basically what Kevin Hall does is these studies where he has people who are willing to come into what they describe as a metabolic ward, which is essentially a unit on the campus of the National Institutes of Health, where people will live. They'll actually live there. And Kevin Hall has complete control over their food. So like he's literally delivering the meals. So in this study, 20 adults who were slightly overweight, a BMI of 27.8 on average, and they were young, a mean age of 30, they came into this metabolic ward. And during the study, there wasn't any sort of specific goal, but they were told to, look, eat until you are full. You want more food? We'll give you more food. You want snacks? We'll give you snacks. Eat until you're full. And they did both diets, a plant-based diet and a ketogenic diet, 2 weeks each, and then they crossed over. The makeup of the diet is like this. The animal-based diet, 10% carbs, 76% fat. The plant-based diet, 75% carbs, 10% fat. So essentially, this is a low-carb, high-fat, animal-based ketogenic diet versus a high-carb, low-fat, plant-based diet, right? The protein is essentially the same. And by the way, the fiber content was radically different. No surprise. The animal-based ketogenic diet is a low-carb diet. Fiber is a carb. So if you're cutting carbs, you're going to be cutting fiber. So low-carb, high in animal products. The animal products don't contain any fiber. In this case, they were getting 8.5 grams per 1,000 kilocalories. The recommended amount is 14 grams of fiber per 1,000 kilocalories. So you can see the animal-based ketogenic diet is deficient in fiber. Meanwhile, the plant-based low-fat diet is more than adequate in terms of the amount of recommendations. So what happened? Well, what we're looking at here is during the course of the 14 days, what's happening to a person's body weight in terms of kilograms. They're all starting at 0. This is our baseline. Does it go up? Does it go down? Okay, here's what we see. In terms of the weight loss, the animal-based ketogenic diet in red, it drops off real fast. Boom. By day 9, big drop off. But then from day 9 to 14, pretty much stagnant. Not a big difference there. Meanwhile, plant-based diet doesn't really do much. And then, oh, hold on, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes. And you see it starting to come down. All right. So, look, if you want to lose weight, the ketogenic diet appears to be the victor. But hold on, not so fast, my friend. Let's look a little bit more closely at this. What happened in terms of the weight loss? Got to get into the details here. So the weight loss on the ketogenic diet was fat-free mass. Fat-free mass is water and muscle. Those are the parts that are not fat. Do you want to lose water and muscle? Is that the goal in weight loss? Because what we're seeing here is that on the animal-based ketogenic diet, that's what happened. People lost water and muscle. But on the flip side, the plant-based low-fat diet, there was not this substantial loss of water and muscle. So what about fat? Well, here we go. We're looking at fat loss, and you can see that on the animal-based ketogenic diet, actually, at 7 days, they hadn't lost any fat. All the weight loss was in the beginning, but they're not losing any fat. And then a little bit of fat loss between days 7 and 14. Flip side, look at this line coming straight down. On the plant-based low-fat diet, people are losing fat consistently during the course of the 2 weeks. How do we explain this? Here's how we do it. Number 1, on both diets, they achieved the same level of satiety. So they were told to, look, eat until you're full. Okay, whether you're on a plant-based diet or a ketogenic diet, these people followed their instructions. They ate until they were full. Same satisfaction, same fullness. But hold on. Right here, we're looking at their energy intake. In the left column, you see what they're taking in terms of their animal-based ketogenic diet. In the right column, you're seeing what they're getting in terms of their plant-based low-fat diet. And every single one of the 20 individuals, this line is moving down. What does that mean? It means that every single person consumed less calories on a plant-based diet than they did on the animal-based ketogenic diet. Less calories, same satisfaction. And when we look at this over the course of 14 days, the red line is the ketogenic diet. The green line is the plant-based diet. What we're seeing is a difference of 689 kilocalories less per day, about 700 kilocalories per day less on the plant-based diet. They were eating until they felt full, yet they were consuming 700 calories less per day. And this adds up. Because when you take this 700 calories less per day, then in about 5 days, you lose a pound. 10 days, 2 pounds. This can definitely lead to results. So when they were eating until they were full, people consumed less calories and they lost fat, not muscle, on a plant-based diet compared to the animal-based ketogenic diet. Am I surprised? No, I'm definitely not. Here's why. Because when you take fiber that you find in plants, we know that the plant-based diet was very high in fiber. And you take that, and the fiber comes into contact with the microbes that live inside our colon. And when this meeting takes place, these microbes, they consume the fiber. This is their food. It's not digestible by humans, but it is digestible by microbes. They have the enzymes. This is their food, and they will reward us when we feed them. The currency of the reward are short chain fatty acids. By the way, there's Waldo right there again. fiber plus microbes equals short chain fatty acids. This is the secret formula. And the thing is, you can't have short chain fatty acids without involving the gut bugs. If we had a sterile gut and you consumed fiber, it would go in your mouth and pass through to the other end. That's not the case. Short chain fatty acids have been shown in clinical research studies to stimulate the release of the satiety hormones peptide YY and GLP-1 to activate the satiety centers in the hypothalamus. These are the exact same hormones that I was talking about with the tofu-based burger that had the same calories, same macros, high in fiber, and more satiety. Number 2, we want insulin sensitivity. All right. Insulin resistance is when a person requires increased levels of insulin to control their blood sugar. Insulin turns out to be a growth hormone. That's problematic when we're trying to lose weight. And you can think of insulin resistance as metabolic imbalance because insulin resistance has been connected to a myriad of metabolic problems: high blood sugar, high blood pressure, altered blood lipids, visceral fat, high uric acid, inflammatory markers. It can progress to type 2 diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, metabolic syndrome, cardiovascular disease. They did a study where they took a group of 95 non-diabetic overweight children and they put them in a buffet and they said, let's see what happens here. These kids, you guys, you can eat whatever you want. Have at it. So they cut these kids loose into the buffet and they observed what happened. And what they found is that the people who had insulin resistance were more likely to overeat and as a result consume an excess of calories more than their body needed. So what we know is that, I am proposing that insulin resistance may be part of what is sort of creating this drive towards weight gain. But the flip side is that obesity causes insulin resistance. If you've read the book Mastering Diabetes, which Cyrus wrote, then you are familiar with these concepts. These are important concepts in our understanding of the metabolism. Lipotoxicity. I talk about dysbiosis as a loss of balance that exists in terms of the gut microbiome. Lipotoxicity is a loss of balance that exists within our metabolism. And when this happens, we have an oversupply of free fatty acids. It can happen for a number of reasons. Too many lipids, especially saturated and trans fats in our diet. Not enough capacity to store those lipids. Overburdened adipose tissue that leads to spillage of the free fatty acids. When you start spilling these free fatty acids, when you have an oversupply of free fatty acids, they start to deposit in other tissues. They're not supposed to be there, but they start showing up in the muscle, in your liver, your pancreas, and this leads to dysfunction of these tissues. So skeletal muscle is supposed to account for 80% of our ability to take up glucose or sugar after a meal. You're impairing that ability to get sugar out of the bloodstream. That's insulin resistance. In the liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which comes from the deposition of these fats, can create damage within the liver, can cause cellular damage and ultimately cellular death, and is soon to become the #1 cause of cirrhosis in the United States. In the pancreas, these cells can actually be affected by this lipid deposition and impair the release of insulin from beta cells. That's a problem when the issue is you're trying to get blood sugar out of the bloodstream, and there's insulin resistance impairing our ability to actually release insulin in the first place. This creates a vicious cycle of insulin resistance and obesity, where insulin resistance causes energy excess, causes obesity, which causes spillage of free fatty acids, which causes lipotoxicity, and round we go. And when we consume more saturated fat in our diet, we are inserting more free fatty acids into the system. So how do we break this vicious cycle? If this is the truth, if this is the issue here, then saturated fat intake should cause insulin resistance. And that, by the way, is exactly what we see in the plant-based versus ketogenic diet. On the animal-based ketogenic diet, low in fiber, high in saturated fat. Plant-based diet, high in fiber, low in saturated fat. And when we look at the free fatty acid release that's taking place after a meal, this is what you see. The animal-based ketogenic diet was far higher in terms of the amount of free fatty acids after a meal, far lower on the plant-based diet. When we have more free fatty acids in the bloodstream, we will have insulin resistance. And there it is right there. You give these people 75 grams of glucose, and what you will see over the course of time is that they will spike their blood sugar. This is on the animal-based ketogenic diet. What you see here is not as big a blood sugar spike because they are not as insulin resistant on the plant-based diet. So insulin sensitivity with greater satiety, reduced caloric intake, and fat loss occurred on the plant-based diet. The question is, does it come back to the fiber? And the answer is, once again, fiber meets microbes to produce short-chain fatty acids that have been shown to bind to the receptors in the liver, the pancreas, our fat cells, our muscle cells. This is where the action is in terms of our metabolism. These are the critical locations. If we want metabolic health, then we need it to take place at these locations. And that's what the short-chain fatty acids are doing. They're going to the critical spots, and they're actually decreasing lipid overflow, reducing fatty acid deposition in these tissues, enhancing fat breakdown, and enhancing insulin sensitivity. What I am showing you is that fiber is the cure for insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. And finally, one of the things that I think is very important in terms of the mechanisms of obesity is we want to avoid metabolic endotoxemia. Metabolic endotoxemia. So there is this thing called bacterial endotoxin, all right, which is a part of the bacteria, specifically the gram-negative bacteria that live inside of our colon. And they can release this bacterial endotoxin. And when they release it and there's a massive surge of it all at once, for example, during an infection, person has an infection, you get a massive spike of this bacterial endotoxin. That's what we call septic shock. That knocks a person out. They get confused, their brain's not functioning properly, they're hyperventilating, their blood pressure drops, their heart rate's through the roof, and they need an ICU imminently. But there's another form of metabolic endotoxemia, which is more chronic, smoldering, not acute. We're not talking about sepsis and septic shock. We're talking about metabolic endotoxemia, where there are sustained levels of this endotoxin. And here's what we know. If you feed a mouse a high-fat diet, you will crank up the endotoxin levels. And when you do that, that leads to increased fat deposition, inflammation throughout the body, in the muscles, the liver, the fat, insulin resistance. If you inject bacterial endotoxin into a mouse, you see the exact same thing for the most part. Endotoxin levels in humans who are obese or who have type 2 diabetes or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, they've been shown to be elevated. This is part of what's going on in a person who is struggling with their weight. And what you see is that in the person who has normal intestinal permeability, the cells that are lining the colon are fused together by tight junctions that prevent the leakage of this bacterial endotoxin. Basically, this is a wall stopping bacterial endotoxin. But on the flip side, when a person has a damaged gut microbiome, you can call it leaky gut, I would call it dysbiosis. You basically have disrupted these junctions that hold these cells together. You open them up, and you are creating a pathway for these bacterial endotoxins to enter into the bloodstream and create this chronic smoldering inflammation that leads to fat deposition. So our goal is to reduce endotoxin levels. And they have done human studies to look at ways that we can accomplish this. In this particular study, they took 8 healthy individuals, put them into a metabolic ward, and basically they gave them 1 month of a Western diet. All right, the Western diet was, by the way, the calories were about the same, but the Western diet was higher in fat and lower in carbs, same protein. High in saturated fat, low in fiber. All right, there's our Western diet, same calories, except high in saturated fat, low in fiber. We've heard this story before. And then they gave them 1 month of a prudent diet, same calories, higher in carbs, fiber is a carb, low in saturated fat, high in fiber. What happens? On the Western diet, they cranked up their endotoxin levels by 71%. On the prudent diet, high in fiber, low in saturated fat, they decreased their endotoxin levels by 31%. Could it be the fiber? What if we add fiber to a high-fat meal? So you give these people an egg McMuffin and an egg muffin and a sausage muffin and 2 hash browns. Okay, gosh, that's crazy. But the question is, what if you include high fiber cereal? Keep the calories the same. One has the high fiber cereal, the other does not. And what you see when you look at the endotoxin levels over the course of 5 hours is that the increase in endotoxin levels on the fiber is attenuated. Yes, it goes up, and then it immediately starts coming down. Goes up for an hour, boom, coming right back down. Meanwhile, without the fiber, up, it takes 3 hours of climbing before it starts to come down. Fiber makes a huge difference. So a high-fat diet, specifically high in saturated fat, appears to drive this metabolic endotoxemia. And you can attenuate some of this response by adding fiber. When fiber shows up, Waldo shows up. Fiber is the key. And that's because, once again, fiber meets microbes. Microbes produce short-chain fatty acids. Those short-chain fatty acids have been shown to enhance the growth of the good gut bugs, suppress the gram-negative bugs, repair the tight junctions, restore competence to the barrier, reduce endotoxin release, and directly modulate the immune system for an anti-inflammatory effect. Everything that you want in terms of repairing and healing the gut to reduce bacterial endotoxin levels, you find when you consume fiber, and fiber meets microbes. So the bottom line is this. Fiber meets microbes, they produce short-chain fatty acids. These short-chain fatty acids from dietary fiber enhance satiety, promote insulin sensitivity, and reduce metabolic endotoxemia. These are 3 critical pathways for a healthy, robust metabolism. And I honestly believe this is what was happening with my body. Is there further proof? Is there further proof that fiber is one of the critical pieces for metabolic health, for weight balance? Sure, of course there is. Look at the Adventist II study. They looked at different populations of people, vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, semi-vegetarian, and non-vegetarian. And what you see is that as you move across the spectrum towards vegan, more plants, less other stuff, what you see is an increase in daily fiber consumption and a decrease in body mass index. In fact, in this study from the Adventist II study, there's only one group that has a normal body mass index, and that is the vegan group. Everyone else would be considered overweight. This is a great fiber consumption. This is not a bad fiber consumption. The Seventh-day Adventists, they like their plants. These people are doing a decent job right here. This is twice as much as the average American, just to put this in perspective. And then I can't get out of a presentation and talk about fiber without making mention of my favorite fiber study of all time, which is Andrew Reynolds from The Lancet, February of 2019. It was a review of 27 randomized controlled trials involving 2,495 people that found that increased dietary fiber intake was associated with a reduction in body weight. Randomized, controlled, interventional trials show that fiber consumption leads to weight loss. The quality of the evidence in this case was graded as high. By the way, I should mention that in addition to this, in the study, again, this is the largest study of dietary fiber in human health ever conducted. They found that when people consume more fiber, they live longer, are less likely to have a heart attack, are less likely to die from heart disease, our number one killer, are less likely to be diagnosed with colon, esophageal, breast cancer, are less likely to die from cancer, our number two killer, are less likely to have a stroke, our number five killer, are less likely to have type 2 diabetes, our number seven killer. And they have, by the way, in interventional studies, lower cholesterol and lower blood pressure. Sounds appealing. So to be clear, I'm not saying the fiber is the only thing that matters. There's other things that matter. Polyphenols, phytonutrients, the food matrix. I think sustainability is very important. I want people to choose a dietary pattern that's actually sustainable. This is why I don't believe in deprivation or restriction. And there are other approaches that matter for weight loss. And they're important too. Exercise, time restricted eating, sleep, stress management, these things are important too. So there are many mechanisms. I'm just explaining to you one that I find to be very important. But what I am saying is this: a diverse, abundant plant-based diet is the optimal choice for energy balance, for metabolic health, and for gut health. And that will translate into fiber-fueled weight loss for those who want it. You don't need to restrict. You don't need to deprive yourself. You don't need to be fearful of your food. You quite simply need to find joy and pleasure in the abundance, the colors, the varieties of plants that exist. Gravitate towards this food that heals and enjoy it without restriction, consuming until you feel full. And you can accomplish your goals, you can heal your metabolism, and you can get to the weight balance that you hope to have. Love yourself. Cyrus mentioned this, so I just want to say that I'm very excited. This is something I just announced in the last week. I have a new book coming out. So I'm very proud of Fiber Fueled. It came out in May of 2020. It was a New York Times bestseller. We've sold 180,000 copies of Fiber Fueled so far, which is insane. Grateful for the support of everyone who's read it. And I have heard from you that you want more. So here it is: 125 recipes, full color. All of them are brand new, except for two. Biome broth is back. By the way, now there's 7 versions of Biome broth. You guys loved it? Boom. Let me give you 7. The Snickers bites are back. Now there's 4 versions of Snickers bites. You guys freaked out about Snickers bites. Okay, fine. I got to give you more. 125 recipes. If you love plants, you will love this cookbook. Recipes are by Alex Caspero. She did all of the recipes. She's a registered dietitian. She did all the recipes for Fiber Fueled. But what I'm really excited about is that I see these people in my clinic every day who suffer with digestive health issues, and they can't eat the way that I eat. It hurts them. And I hate that, because food is meant to be a source of joy and pleasure, not something that you are scared of or trying to avoid. And so I took the opportunity to create a cookbook, not just for people who want delicious food or who want plant-based recipes, but also for people who have food intolerances. And I'm super excited. It's 11 chapters. It includes an entire methodology of how to approach food intolerances. I expect this book to become the standard in terms of how to approach food intolerances for people who need it. There are 2 protocols built into the recipes: low FODMAP, low histamine. We got breakfast, lunch, and dinner for all of that. And you can learn how to sprout, ferment, make sourdough. Proud of the book, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. It's coming soon, and I hope that you will consider pre-ordering it. You can check out at my website here, and then follow me on social media here. So. And we're done.
That's fantastic. Apologies if our little baby Indigo is a little bit noisy here. She was very excited by your presentation. That's why she's trying to communicate that to you. Will, I learned a lot in that presentation. So out of curiosity, Rob Knight, who was a professor that originally planted the seed in your head that the diversity of fiber is the single most important predictor in human health. Is he plant-based himself? Do you happen to know?
I don't know. You have to understand, Cyrus, that many of these studies that I reference, we live in a world on the internet where people plant their flags and stand by their tribe. And these are scientists, and these are people who are just trying to get to the bottom of understanding what's happening with the gut microbiome. And so, like guys like Rob Knight, I have no clue how Rob Knight eats, but I don't think Rob Knight necessarily cares what his personal dietary pattern is. I think Rob Knight is the kind of guy, based upon everything that I know about him, this is a guy who cares about the science and could one day be considered for something like a Nobel Prize. So you're not going to mess around trying to prove any sort of point. You're just trying to do good science and show the world the way that the world works and what our biology looks like.
Valid. Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Valid point. And okay, so we've got a lot of questions that have actually been coming in the chat box. The first one is it possible to eat too much fiber in a day? And or how many grams of fiber do you recommend per person per day?
Yeah, it's absolutely possible to eat too much fiber per day. I want to be clear on that because I sometimes feel like because I wrote a book with the word fiber in the title, people think that I somehow am here to say that it should be like maximum fiber for every person at every moment. That's not true. And that definitely would not work for many of the people who I see in my clinic. Fiber is something that our gut microbiome needs to be adapted to. So if you have not been consuming a lot of fiber, guess what? Your gut microbiome is adapted to not processing fiber. And if you suddenly ramp it up, it's January 1st and you like, boom, 100% plant-based, January 1st, here we go. You are asking your gut to do something that has not been trained for. And that can create problems. A lot of people get gas and bloating right now. And a lot of people, I feel like, Cyrus, these influencers who we see that quit veganism, and they go on the internet and they say, plant-based doesn't work. I had gas and bloating, abdominal pain. I felt horrible. My IBS was off the charts. Gosh, I wish I could talk to those people because it's a matter of understanding the nuance with fiber. You got to start low. You got to go slow. And you have to do what your gut is adapted to. And as you move it up, just like with exercise, we grow stronger. We become conditioned to handle stronger, larger amounts of weight. The same is true of our gut microbes. The gut is like a muscle. It can be trained, it can be made stronger. The way that we do that is by starting low and slowly ramping up fiber over time to give it the opportunity to adapt with what we're doing.
Okay, so this is a really good point because the same dynamic that you're explaining here, where if you're suffering from gut dysbiosis or any digestive disorder, if you go from that state to eating a large quantity of fiber, it actually is physically painful because there is a whole collection of metabolic processes which are happening simultaneously inside of your small intestine and large intestine that can result in pain and discomfort, and that may lead you to the conclusion that it's bad for you or that it's not going to work for you. The same exact thing happens to people who are living with insulin resistance, who try to eat a high carbohydrate diet and see a high blood glucose value or multiple high blood glucose values and come to the same conclusion that, hey guys, I tried to do exactly what you're saying. It doesn't work. Look, my blood glucose is high. And the response is basically like, hey, listen, it can work, but you have to gradually move into it because you can't just go from 0 to 60 hoping to see dramatic effects right off the bat. It doesn't work that way.
Exactly.
Okay, so next question. What do you think about fiber supplements? Something like Citracel or Metamucil. Is it equally effective to get fiber from food, or can you also get it from fiber supplements?
I think there's a role for fiber supplements. Let's put this into perspective. First of all, I absolutely believe that the number one source of fiber needs to be our diet. That's completely clear. I am an advocate for a plant predominant diet. I think that people should be as plant-based as possible because that's where the money is at, not just in terms of our gut microbiome, but in terms of human health in general. So I think that most of our fiber should be coming from our diet and the food that we eat. There's definitely a place for fiber supplements. So fiber supplements can provide assistance to people who are in the process of working towards ramping up their fiber and maybe struggling with these foods. I find that they're of great benefit to my patients who have digestive health issues. And to be completely honest with you, even in health, there's enough there that I believe in terms of what it's doing for our body that I actually do it myself. So I'm a big believer in prebiotics and prebiotic fiber supplementation. This is how we feed, nourish, and fuel a healthy gut microbiome. Again, it starts with food. You can't supplement your way from a C- gut to an A+. That's not possible. But what you can do is you can take a C- gut, start to change your diet, start to change lifestyle measures, move it towards an A, and then with supplements, you boost it up to an A+.
Okay, so let's go back to the previous question about having too much fiber and not enough fiber. Um, Give me a number of grams per day. A woman should eat a certain number of grams per day of fiber. A man should eat a certain number of grams per day, or is it dependent on other factors like your body weight or your physical activity? Give us some recommendations here. How do people know they're eating enough?
Uh, you're eating enough if you. So I personally don't count grams of fiber. I never have for myself. All right. I count plants because what matters is, yeah, because what matters is variety. What matters is variety. So, like, you take 30 grams of fiber from a supplement. I'm not of the belief that this is a healthy thing. Instead, what we want is we want to be basically like crowding our plate with plants. And if you focus on this is just kind of my way of gamifying it and making it fun and make it so that I'm gravitating towards things that I love as opposed to like trying to be very rigid and strict about rules. I don't like rules. So more plants, super simple, like more varieties. When you do that, you are inherently, because you're pursuing more plants, you are inherently going to be crowding your plate. All plants contain fiber. So when you're eating a wide variety of plants, as long as you're not like actually trying to prove my theory wrong, like actively going out of your way to eat the smallest amount of like multiple different types of plants, when you eat as many varieties as possible and you eat like a serving of each, you're going to get your fiber. Now, what is the amount, just for the sake of being complete? The amount, Cyrus, which I mentioned very briefly during the talk, is 14 grams of fiber per 1,000 kilocalories. And if you take that and you apply that to men and women, the average woman is expected to get about 25 grams of fiber per day. The average man is expected to get about 38 grams of fiber per day. To put this into perspective, again, women should be getting 25. The average woman is getting about 15 in the US. Men should be getting 38. The average man is getting 18. We're not even close. The fiber deficit is perhaps our biggest nutritional deficit that exists. And it's because, quite simply, we're not consuming plants. It's not complicated.
25 and 38 seem like very low numbers to me, especially given the abundance of fiber from a plant-based diet. So I understand your point is that those are good recommendations. We should be aiming for those targets, but correct me if I'm wrong. When you eat a plant-based diet, if you're eating predominantly plants, hitting 25 for a woman, hitting 38 for a man. I mean, you could do that for one meal. You could do that for breakfast.
Yeah, and well, these are minimal amounts. We're not even talking optimal amounts here. We're talking minimal amounts. So, and 97% of Americans are not hitting the minimal recommended amount. I mean, Cyrus, it's embarrassing. We do clinical research studies. We look at fiber intake. We divide people up into groups, low, like basically 4 groups, 4 quartiles, all right, of fiber consumption. And you look at the top quartile, the group that's supposed to be the high fiber consumers, and you see that they're consuming 22 grams of fiber per day.
That's a joke. I'm sorry.
That's a joke. You realize that even the high fiber consumers in the US are not even getting the minimal recommended amount. This is embarrassing.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, so then how about the distribution between raw versus cooked? Is there such a thing? Do you recommend having a certain proportion of your total daily plant intake as raw, or is that not even worth worrying about?
They did a study looking at raw versus cooked. They took the exact same plants and they cooked it. And what they discovered is that when you cook your food, you actually are biochemically changing the fiber structure within the plant, which makes sense, right? Like the fiber in kale leaf is not going to be the same after you steam it. And so when they did this, by biochemically changing the structure of the plant, of the fiber, you actually are having differing effects in the gut microbiome. So what I say is, yes, it's diversity, right? Diversity. I want as many different types of plants as possible. But guess what? I want diversity of cooking techniques too. So eat some raw, like nibble on some raw, but have some that you cook too. And that way you're feeding all the gut microbes. That's what we want.
Got it. Diversity of cooking techniques. That's I haven't heard you say that before.
Diversity of cooking techniques, diversity of plants, diversity of exercise, diversity of fermented foods. I have a lot of diversity groups that I like.
Okay. I'm all about diversity. That's great. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about antibiotics. Antibiotics are widely known to cause damage to the gut microbiome. So suppose that you have been prescribed antibiotics by your medical professional and you went through maybe a full course of antibiotics and you find that your digestion is impaired afterwards. What can you do? How do you fix that problem? Is it literally just about trying to pour in as much as the highest diversity of fiber, of plants possible, or are there specific strategies which antibiotic users may be able to employ?
Yeah. So first of all, a surprise. Most people would expect that when you take an antibiotic, the solution is a probiotic.
Good point.
And actually, when we studied this, so that's an assumption. And then when we studied this, September of 2018, a paper came out in the journal Cell out of Israel, showing us convincingly that when you take antibiotics and then you follow them with probiotics, you actually are slowing the recovery of the gut microbiome. This is why we have to do clinical research, because what we assume to be true oftentimes proves to not be true.
Right.
So the solution is not probiotics. Very rarely. There are occasional situations, but the solution is that you want to lean into the plants in the way that you're describing, Cyrus. Lean into the plants, lean into the fiber. Ideally, you're doing this during the antibiotics, preferably before the antibiotics, and continuing through after the antibiotics. So continuing to fuel the good guys, right? Because when we take an antibiotic, we are dropping napalm. And we are basically burning out these microbes, and then we have to build it back up. And when we build it back up, we want to build it up with as many of the good guys as possible. And we want them to be the dominant force in there. But it's not just a fiber thing. I mean, I do believe that like plant-based diet in diversity, that's important. But let's not miss out on the other opportunities. Sleep, exercise, spending time outdoors. These are critical pieces for the gut microbiome. And the last thing is, now is not the time to be sabotaging your gut. When you're trying to heal, when you're trying to repair, now is not the time for alcohol, saturated fat, sugar, ultra-processed foods.
I'm going to agree with you more. Okay, so while we're on this medication theme, let's talk about birth control. Does birth control affect the health of your gut microbiome?
It's a question that people feel very passionately about, and I understand the reasons why. There are people who feel very strongly one side or the other. And unfortunately, the research is not as far along as I would love for it to be in order to provide us with clarity to these questions. So I think that we're in this place where I'm going to tell you what the research says, but we have to take this for what it is, which is like, this is not etched in stone. We want more research to be done on this particular topic. But there was a study that was done, Cyrus, where women who took an oral contraceptive pill specifically, there was an increased risk of being diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease. And inflammatory bowel disease is a condition in which the gut microbiome has been disturbed. It's impossible to have inflammatory bowel disease without a damaged gut. So if this is true, again, it's like one population-based study. We need more information. But if this is true, oral contraceptive pill associated with inflammatory bowel disease, then it has to be true that oral contraceptive pills may have an effect on the gut microbiome that's negative.
Got it. Okay. So if somebody's taking birth control and they experience that there's an alteration in their gut microbiome or their digestive status, again, what do they do? Is it just a question of eating a higher diversity of plants that's going to potentially fix this problem in a short period of time? And or second larger question here is, for those of people who you referred to at the end of the talk, who maybe they're not on birth control, but they're just in a position where if they start to eat a lot of plant material, it's going to physically hurt them, right? They might end up with gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, and or abdominal pain. How long does the transition to a truly plant-based diet, how long should that take? Does it take a month? Does it take 2 months? Does it take a year in order to like fully get to a point where you're eating a plant-based diet in a sustainable manner without digestive distress?
It depends on the individual. So what I will say is this: our studies are very clear that in 4 weeks, you can make a profound difference in terms of the gut microbiome. What does profound look like for the individual? It depends on your starting point. If you have inflammatory bowel disease, that is as inflamed of a gut microbiome as there is out there, as inflamed as it exists. And in that case, it's going to take more than 4 weeks to heal the gut. I mean, to me, in that case, we're looking at 6, 12, 18 months. This is something that's more of a long-term goal, right? And we have to just work through the process. This is not a shortcut or a quick fix, but this is the way that the body works. This is biology, even if it's not what we want to be true.
Yep.
And we need to follow that path. That is the proper path, and roll in that direction and be persevering and basically take it and you start to build momentum and you feel the difference, and you might not fully be there, but you are making progress, and that progress is worth celebrating.
Yep. Okay, great. So there's on the same tip, there's a couple of people who are talking about gas. You probably heard the song, beans are good for your heart. The more you eat, the more you fart. The more you fart, the better you feel. So eat your beans with every meal, right? But there's a lot of people who say, okay, well, when I try and eat beans, because you're recommending that I consume legumes as part of my diverse collection of plant material, it makes me really gassy. In fact, it's very uncomfortable. What am I supposed to do in that situation? So, you just gave a very good answer here. So for anybody who is experiencing gas, unnecessary flatulence, bloating, do exactly what Will is saying here, because it's not a sprint. This is a marathon. It can take a while. There's a very highly individual response, and that is normal, and that is okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's totally true. And these are the topics that, for example, my new cookbook, this is what we're going to be talking about. I mean, we're talking about food intolerances and creating a stepwise progression of how you approach these. Like, exactly what do you do if you have trouble with gas, bloating from beans? Let me teach you. So, and there's certain things that you do upfront. For example, you want to make sure that there's not specific health issues standing in the way that need to be addressed first. Because if you have a health issue, it's not just a matter of going low and slow and ramping up the beans. You have to address that health issue. But once you get past that, then there is a process that you work through that allows you to ultimately emerge and come out on the other side. And the last thing that I would say is that it's not just, we focus on the nutrition so much. It's not just nutrition. We have to think about these things where we can elevate, we can rise the tide on human health without even lifting a fork. And so I'm talking about things like, honestly, above all else, if there is stress in your life, history of trauma or abuse, disordered eating pattern, unhealthy relationship with your food, we have to heal that. And we're not going to get you healthy until we do. And so this is something I've seen time and again. So yes, sleep, exercise, meditation, spend time outdoors. These things are important. But if there's something going on in your life, I literally saw someone today, Cyrus. I have been working with this patient for years to get her into a proper, sustained remission from her ulcerative colitis. And the key ended up being a career change.
Phenomenal.
I'm pulling out all my tricks. I'm doing everything that I can. But when she changed jobs, she left an environment that was chronically traumatic, chronically stressful, unhealthy. And by leaving that environment, it gave her the safety that she needed to actually start to heal her gut. And now it's like her ulcerative colitis is non-existent.
That's crazy. Yeah, I just got goosebumps when you said that. That's phenomenal. Okay,
Goosies.
so we have 1 more minute, 2 more minutes to go. There are a couple questions here about what tests can I take to determine the health of my microbiome slash is the breath test for SIBO an effective method at diagnosing?
Oh man, these are big questions that you're lobbing my way with less than a minute to go.
You have 60 seconds. Go.
Yeah, I do address these specific questions in great detail in my upcoming book. I talk about SIBO quite a bit. And the issue with SIBO is, gosh, I mean, it's so hard to answer in like this short period of time, but because it's a big topic. A lot of people are talking about SIBO, a lot of hype, the hype outpacing the science. And we have to be evidence-based in the way that we approach this.
30
And the
seconds.
problem is that if the test is not a reliable test, if there's a 50% chance of a false positive and a 50% chance of a false negative, what's the point? Why are we doing it? Seriously,
Yeah.
if there's a 50% chance, if it's a coin flip whether the test is accurate at all, then what's the point of doing the test if it can't
And
give
is
you
that the
accurate
case with the
information?
breath test? Is
Yes.
that what happens? It
That is the case.
because the breath
That is
test
the case.
testing methane, if I'm not mistaken.
Methane or hydrogen, but
Hydrogen.
the issue is that most people who believe they have SIBO because they have read on the internet that gas and bloating means SIBO, they do not. Now, in your population, the mastering diabetes population, I would expect a higher prevalence of SIBO because they have diabetes.
Got it.
Diabetes is something that can predispose to developing SIBO. People who have had surgery on their gut specifically, are at higher risk of developing SIBO. But the average person out there who has gas and bloating, they come into my practice, they say, I think I have SIBO. And when you dig into the details, they're constipated. Constipation is the #1 cause of gas and bloating. If you fix the constipation, gas and bloating goes away.
Phenomenal. Okay. On that note, I'm going to pause and show my screen one more time. For those of you, we sincerely apologize. There was a little technical glitch at the very beginning of this webinar. And I think there were a lot of you that weren't able to come in. So at the beginning of this webinar, we talked about the new Forks Over Knives frozen food collection that includes 3 different flavors that you see on the screen right here. The first one in the front is the fire roasted enchilada stack. The second one in the middle right here, shown in green, is the sesame ginger bowl. And the final purple one in the back is the Tuscan garden penne bowl. All 3 of these are guaranteed delicious. The Forks Over Knives team has worked tirelessly to make sure that not only they look good, but that they taste phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. These things are available right now exclusively at Sprouts Farmers Market. So if you have a Sprouts near you, please go to the Sprouts Farmers Market and pick this up. These boxes are normally $6.99 a piece. They are on sale right now for $4.99 each. So if you have a chance to go pick them up, please do. And then please write a review and let us know what you think about them, because I have a feeling that these are going to be very tasty. And I personally cannot wait to get my hands on them myself. Will, do you have any parting thoughts, any last words for those 900 people who are still here?
Yeah, the most important thing, we were here today to talk about metabolism and our connection to our gut microbiome. And you've heard me say this. If you've read my book, you know that this was the punchline from the book. The single greatest predictor of a healthy gut is the diversity of plants in your diet. You are being sold the opposite of this by diet culture. You are being sold to deprivation, restriction, fear of your food. That's not healthy. That is the opposite of a promise that can stick and be sustainable for the future. No matter who you are, no matter what dietary pattern you follow, I can assure you mine was worse. I changed my diet slowly over the course of time. Progress over perfection. I'm not perfect. I've never been perfect. And I moved in the right direction by consuming more plants in variety, in abundance, without restriction. I gravitated towards food that I loved, food that brought me great joy. I'd never had to count calories, but I counted plants. And I took myself to where in my 40s, I'm thriving. I'm feeling younger than I did 10 years ago. I've never been in such great shape in my life. And I love the man that I see in the mirror when I look in the mirror. And I hope that for every single one of you at home, I hope that you can find the same. You deserve it.
I love it. That's a great way to end. This is brilliant. Thanks for all your for your beautiful words here. There's been a lot of people in the chat box who are saying very, very, very good presentation. I learned a lot. I'm gonna go pick up your book. So again, if you haven't picked up either the original Fiber Fuel book, which came out in 2020, that book is absolutely timeless, and you're gonna learn a lot. Not only what Dr. B talked about today, but also a whole collection more. And then in addition to that, he has a second book that's coming out. Give me the full title of that book, Will.
The new book is called the Fiber Fueled Cookbook.
The Fiber Fueled Cookbook. It's just that simple. It goes straight to Amazon. Highly recommend picking up a copy of this book. It's going to be another bestseller. There's no question about it. And the first book was phenomenal. The second book is going to be even tastier than the first book. No questions asked. Will, you are a gem. Thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate your time today.
I want to thank you, Cyrus. I thought you actually did an amazing job of balancing hosting this and also being a new dad, and so I commend you for that. And congratulations on the new bundle at home. And I thank you again, man. I can't wait to see you soon.
Awesome. You too. I'm going to share one last photo here of Indigo that I took this morning, just so everybody can see just what a wonderful little cute baby she is. She's sporting.
I love it. Yeah, it's great.
But
that's fantastic.
Yep, it's been fun. So thanks so much, and we will catch you next time.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Y'all take care. Be safe. Be healthy. Eat plants.